Hello, Podsmashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-bit Podsmash,
where gaming goes to grab a beer. We are your hosts.
Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right, and tonight we are picking up where we left off on our best video games of all time list as compiled by Wikipedia. And again, we will run through why we chose that. So if you're just picking up this episode for the first time, midway through this series, if you will, then don't worry, you won't be that lost. And we'll basically explain our methodology when we get into it. But yeah, we bit off more than we could chew, and we fully acknowledge that. I thought we could do this entire list in one episode, and it's probably going to be at least a 3-parter, maybe even a 4-parter. We're going to see how far we get tonight, but we definitely want to do, when discussing these video games and whether or not they belong on the list and what they've brought to video gaming, we didn't want to do any of them disservice. In fact, we already got a little bit of flack from people from last episode for doing a couple of those games a little disservice.
Well, we haven't played everything.
It's true, exactly. We haven't played all these games.
We try. So we really did.
We do as much as we
haven't played everything. The cool part about the multiple parts here, you can jump in on the year range that you care about. You don't have to listen to all 4 parts. So come in, you're not going to miss anything. It's not like sequential, or we're going to build on the last list, or we're not there's nothing about this episode that you will have missed in the previous one if you haven't listened to it. So
exactly. So
come along for the ride.
It's technically part 2, but it's going to probably be labeled like 1994 through however far we get. So we don't want anyone to feel like they're left out because they're like, oh, I missed part 1. Now, anyways, we are where gaming goes to grab a beer, so we'll talk about what we're drinking first.
I am drinking Dogfish Head. No surprise there, because they're my favorite brewery, and I've said it 1,000 times on the show. Sequence Ale, the Session Sour, which is black sea salt and lime. Sorry, black limes and sea salt, lime juice, lime peel. It's what it's brewed with. So there's no it's not added to it, but it is brewed with those things, and it's very, very delicious. It's
good.
Really
I'm a fan
light.
of it.
It goes down easy, and it has that sour hit mixed with the salt on the sides. It's fantastic.
Nice. I am finishing up the beers I had left over from Memorial Day. So the Wild Things, Sierra Nevada, I think, the Wild Things. I actually didn't bring the can in with me, so I don't know. But it's a sour with guava, strawberry, and
that was good.
Something else.
I had a couple
It is
of
good.
those.
Yeah, it's sour. So pink and sour. So
yeah,
I like it. I like it a lot. But
yeah.
Anyways. Well, cool. That's beer. Yay.
That's what we're drinking.
Yeah. So normally we start the show by talking about goings-ons and whatever news is happening. So we've got a couple of things this week, and it's still pretty light because of certain events that have not happened yet for us. But yeah. Anyways, so why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners, the Pod Smashers, what we know at this date.
So Sega has come out with a new micro mini console. If you knew, in the long stream of minis that are out there, started by Nintendo with the NES Classic, moving into the Super NES Classic. The Sega came out with their their Mega Drive Classic, or whatever you want, mini. I don't even know what it's called. I have one. Well, the next one out, there's been a TurboGrafx one, there's been a PlayStation one. They're all over. Every company's making these things now. This is ridiculous. It's called the Game Gear Micro, and it was a Sega announcement. The thing is 80 millimeters by 43 millimeters, and the screen is 1.15 inches big. 1.15 inches big. It is tiny. It is very small. Obnoxiously small.
Okay.
I don't understand why this thing exists.
It seems like an April Fool's joke, but it does. June.
Yeah, it's very much an April Fool's joke. But it gets worse, Penguin. It gets worse. There's not only one of them, there are 4 of them that are in different colors, and they're $50 a piece. $50! And they only come with 4 games. But it gets worse. Now. It continues to get worse. There's one more problem with this. There are 4 different games on each of the 4 Sega Game Gear Minis. So in order to get all of the games, you have to buy all 4 of them. 4 of them cost $200 to get all of the games.
Wow.
It even takes one step further in how bad this gets. This is ridiculous. There's a bundle that you can buy all 4 of them, and it's worded. I'm going to try and I want to read the verbiage here, but it's not there. That's fine. Okay. They'll throw in the Sega Big Window if you buy this bundle of all 4 of them. And it's this magnifying glass that clips onto the front that makes the screen slightly bigger. And it looks obnoxious because the Game Gear Mini is so small that this little big window attachment almost takes over the whole console, leaving room only for like the edge of your thumbs to press the buttons. And
yeah, this thing's just stupid.
It's ridiculous. It is $250 to get all 4 of them with the magnifying glass. Yes, the price of a PlayStation, more expensive than a PlayStation 4 right now, to get 4 Game Gear Minis with 16 games and a magnifying glass. Absolutely
Sega,
bonkers.
there's a reason why you lost the console war. Go home,
what?
Sega. You're drunk. You're drunk.
What? Yeah. Like, oh my gosh.
That's funny. Yeah, I did not see
Horrible.
that. That's really funny. When was that
really
announced?
Funny. It was announced June 3rd. So 5 days ago?
5 days ago. Okay. Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I can't believe that didn't even cross my news feed. That's pretty funny.
So if you have a chance to look it up, there's a video on YouTube that has the announcement. It's bonkers.
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
Wow.
So that's the first piece of news. The second piece of news is just a really quick update because we had an episode featuring speedrunners and challenges. Summer Games Done Quick is on my radar, and we mentioned it in our previous episodes. So they are still doing their Summer Games Done Quick this year, and it's going to be the week of August 16th through the 23rd. But because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, it's only going to be online. So everything will be online. You'll still be able to see the runners do their thing via stream, and it's all of the money, 100% of all the donations will go directly to Doctors Without Borders. That's an organization that I don't know a whole lot about, that I should educate myself on. But that's happening. We're fans. I will want to tune in. So I just know that they came out with that.
You don't know about Doctors Without Borders?
No, what do they do?
I mean, they're basically, it's medical relief, right? So all of their, well, not all, I'm sure, but their whole thing is they provide like trained medical professionals, who have degrees in I'm assuming the West, but Western medicine basically. But they have degrees and they're doctors, and they basically just like ship them around the world where people need, where doctors are needed because doctors are scarce in parts of like the third world. So that's about all I know about them. But yeah, a lot of doctors will do it as a way to like give back and also get a chance to kind of travel and see and help people while also getting to see the world. And it's generally considered a pretty noble thing, although I'm sure it's wrapped up in all kinds of politics that I just don't care to investigate right now. So if you are more aware of it, then please let us know if there's any problems with it. But in the meantime, it seems to be a pretty good organization from my experience with them. So yay, Doctors Without Borders. Games Done Quick. Check it out. Donate.
Yes.
But
the last piece of news today, Sony tweeted, this is June 8th. That's we're dating our podcast recording. So this will have already happened by the time you listen to this. It's kind of pointless to even talk about, but they rescheduled their Sony PlayStation 5 game reveal event. And the reason why I'm even talking about this, I should say, is because last week we talked about Black Lives Matter and how Sony pushed back their event for just reasons. It's awesome. So this is their follow-up now. They're actually posting a date. They pushed it back exactly 7 days a week. And their announcement reads this. Hi all, thanks for being patient and understanding while we rescheduled the PlayStation 5 event for Thursday, June 11th. We needed to step aside so key voices could be heard during this historic and important time. What I love about that is they reiterated, we need to step aside so key voices could be heard. Like they actually said that again. So that's pretty cool. I think that's just something neat. I know Sony's also been matching donations to various Black Lives Matter organizations. So that's awesome. Good on Sony. But here's the rest of the quote. Now that the event is confirmed for June 11th, I wanted to add that this pre-taped program will be broadcast at 1080p and 30 frames per second. This eased the show's production process during a time when many of our team and developers are working from home. The games you'll see on Thursday will look even better when you play them on PS5 with a 4K TV, as you would expect. Fantastic, Sony. Thank you for setting expectations, because the internet would have run wild, and there would have been this debate about whether compression was ruining and not. And thank you. You said it, 1080p, 30 frames per second, but it's also going to be compressed, so it's going to look even worse. That's fine. We know the games will look good. Thank you, Sony. It's also best if you watch while wearing headphones. If you can, there's some cool audio work in the show, and it might be harder to appreciate if it's pumped through your phone or laptop speakers. So, noted. Thank you, Sony. It's awesome. So, lots to digest there. So if you watch
we'll probably have again, this is in the past for all of you guys, and we will have a breakdown of it in a bonus episode more than likely. So just if you haven't listened to that yet and missed the press conference altogether, then just check out that episode. We'll break it down. So cool. All right. Well, that moves us on to our next segment, which is
doing this podcast is our favorite
thing. Doing this podcast is our favorite
thing. I threw a curveball at you.
You did, and editing magic will fix it.
Yep. How about that?
Favorite things is our segment where we just update you on the thing that we're excited about, the thing we're digging this week. And Termite, you seem to have one ready to go. I need to think
ready to talk about this because it's kind of relevant to all the stuff that's going on. We're in a pandemic, right? We're in Virginia. Virginia just entered phase 2 Friday, June 5th. So after that, people gathering groups are now up to 50 allowed. We're still have to wear masks inside, but restaurants are allowed to open up and have like 50% seating. So my favorite thing is we went for a hike on Sunday out at Caledon State Park in Virginia. It's actually in King George. And so we walked through the woods for like 3 miles, which for a 5-year-old, my one step is like 3 for him. So he was exhausted, worn out, sweaty. It was great. We packed snacks and water. It was fine. Had a great time. Disconnecting from phones, disconnecting from the world and the internet and the noise, and just having some time. Like literally there was no service out there except for like poor 3G service in case you needed to make a call. And it was great. I wore the baby. I have an almost 1-year-old. I wore him on my back. So I got a decent workout in, walking around in the heat. And afterward, we exercised our ability to do phase 2. And we went to our first restaurant in 3 months. We sat in a place, and it's Vivify downtown. It's a burger joint with a rooftop bar. So it was completely open outside, and it was right before the dinner rush. It was around 4:00. So the place was empty. There was one other family sitting all the way on the opposite end. It was absolutely phenomenal. We ordered burgers. We ordered fries. It was fresh. We didn't have to do takeout and drive the food home. We had beer on tap. Well, actually, it was in cans because what they offered and what they had on tap was not what I wanted, but it was there. It was fresh. It was hot in the sun, and it was amazing. So that is my favorite thing. My family event with the restaurant, first time in 3 months. Are you with me still? You have been super quiet or we're disconnected. Okay.
No, I'm with you. I was listening. Yeah. I was also thinking because I'm trying to mull over what my favorite thing may or may not be. So with that in mind. It's almost
like there's the pandemic, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're starting to kind of reopen and get back out. And it's fantastic. And it felt so good. And it made me appreciate restaurants infinitely more. So if there's a silver lining to the pandemic, and maybe there's that trite example of happiness that comes out of it.
So I'll just say that I don't really have a favorite thing this week. It's not often that I'm not able to think of something. And in this case, I think there's a good reason for it. I don't want to get all preachy on this or anything, but I just really, it's also intensely personal, but I've just been trying to listen and evaluate, based on what's going on in our country and the voices that are speaking up, and just trying to take stock of things a lot recently. So I've been just kind of mentally in my head a lot this week, for better or for worse. And so I guess again, you could say that is a favorite thing, but it's not easy work and it's not fun or exciting. It's just intensely personal, and it is, and this is intensely exactly painful sometimes. So
it's exactly why we had to go on a hike and disconnect from everything. I am right there with you. I'm 100,000%. And we have been in our heads and my wife and I back and forth, and in our own heads and in our own minds, and we're digesting the news and we're trying to follow and interact with folks and trying to make sense of all of this. Our audience got a sense of what we're going through last week. Listen to that. We went on a long rant about Black Lives Matter and our country and the status and all this thing. So yes, this outing, which was only a total of like 3 or 4 hours of disconnecting from phones and stuff, was so necessary because I picked it all back up. Like I'm back in it now. I'm just not exhausted anymore.
Yeah.
And so I totally understand where you're at. That makes 100%.
Exactly. So cool. Well, then I will forego, for the first time in 144 episodes, I will forego sharing a favorite thing because I don't really actually have one this week because of intensely personal self-reflection that's been going on. So anyways, all right. Well, we are going to skip DLC this week because we have a lot of ground to cover. We are going to try to get through about 10 years worth of the best games of all time. And unlike last 2 weeks ago where we were mostly sitting around in the 80s, now we're firmly entrenched in the 90s. And that's the decade that we grew up in. So we are going to try to cover as much ground as we can, but again, depending on where we land, we may have to do another part or two. We will undoubtedly have to at least do one more part of the best video games list of all time. But let's catch you up. If you are not aware of what this main topic is, it is, or if you didn't listen to the last one, part 1, we are going through Wikipedia's best games of all time list. You may be asking, why Wikipedia? Termite, do you want to explain why we're doing Wikipedia?
Because this list that you have found is actually a aggregate list from, I don't even know how many resources, 47 different video game journalist outlets. So Games Radar, Game Informer, Polygon, Edge, The Wrap, Stuff, IGN, GameSpot, Edge, IGN, like tons of different stuff. That's not the whole list, but they've all put their lists together, and then someone put those 47 lists, merged them all together, and made this big master list on Wikipedia for us.
Right. It's not so much merging them. What they do is they curated the list and went through and said, okay, well, if a game only shows up on one person's best games of all time list, then it doesn't count. Right. What they did was each game on this list appeared on at least 6 different lists. So 6 different people, 6 different relatively reputable journalists, all agreed that these games that are on this list, again, at least 6 of them agreed that they're the best games of all time. So, yeah, obviously all of this is up for debate, and all of this is relatively subjective, because you're going to hear us. We're going to try to break down each one and sort of talk about like whether we think it should be on the list, and we'll talk about what it had to offer. Did it bring games forward? And then we'll also break down some overall trends as we encounter them. But, yeah, we understand it's subjective, so we're going to be applying our subjective opinions to this as well. So this is by no means an attempt at trying to codify some hard and fast thing. We thought this was an interesting list when we stumbled across it. And I actually stumbled across it because I was looking up information about Persona 5 because I'm playing it, and I saw that Persona 4 is on this list, but obviously spoilers, we'll get to that eventually. And I was like, there's a list? So so we're using Wikipedia, we appreciate that methodology of picking the game. Each game has to have shown up at least 6 times. So let's dive in, because we want to cover ground. So
last note, any omissions from this list are not our fault. We're not here to look, like you said, we're not here to codify a perfect list. So we don't have a master list behind the scenes of like, oh, these games are missing from 1994. We don't have a clue.
Right.
We're just looking at what's in front of us. We don't have the whole grand scheme of the perspective of all of the things in the world in front of us. So if we missed your favorite game or glossed over it, it's only because it did not show up on 6 at least best video games of all time.
Yeah, and when we're talking about overall, at the end we'll kind of try to break down overall trends, and that's a perfect time to, if we can think of anything that we're like, oh yeah, this came out that year and it didn't show up on the list, that's surprising, then that's the time we'll do it. Alternatively, we might do that all at the end after our last part, depending on if we have time. So cool. All right, then let's dive in. Where we left off, 1993, the last game we talked about was a game called Syndicate by EA. It was a tactics game, and neither of us knew a lot about it. But it was the last one where we left off. So we're picking up in 1994 with
Donkey Kong Country.
Yep, by Nintendo for the SNES. So
made by Rareware. Man, did they kick this up. And the graphics wars and the console wars were in their prime and their fervor, and the graphics in this game were unreal. They used this new graphics rendering technology, the Mode 7, combined with stuff they could add to the cartridges hardware-wise and like boost the power and make these amazingly animated real-life looking sprites with amazing music mixed in. And so like that was like the platforming game to own, that was to smash Sega into the ground.
Right. And this one's fun because, again, one of the first games on this list is the original Donkey Kong. And I had mentioned in the previous episode that this that game spawned 2 very wildly successful franchises in the actual Donkey Kong franchise and Mario, since that was the first time. So it's nice to see Donkey Kong now making his way onto the list on his own franchise, not his shared game of the original. So I don't know if this is the first actual Donkey Kong game after the original. I don't think it is.
No, there was Donkey Kong Jr., there was Donkey Kong 3, and there was Donkey Kong Math, and I don't know, a whole bunch of stuff.
But this game, I mean, I did not have an SNES, but I loved playing this game whenever I'd go to friends' houses who had it.
Yeah,
this game,
absolutely incredible. Totally ridiculously hard.
94, not holding back any punches. Next on the list is Earthbound for Nintendo, or by Nintendo for the SNES. Yep. I did not play I actually don't think I've played any of the Earthbound games. I only recognize Ness from Smash Bros. So, did you have any?
Yeah, I mean, it's developed by HAL Laboratories, which made Kirby and Smash Bros. So that's the developer, published by Nintendo. It was the second entry in Mother. So this is known as Mother 2 in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
There was a third game that was, I think, a Game Boy Advance game, Mother 3, that everyone is clamoring for them to remake or to bring forward. It's never been ported. It's Japan only. So it's part of that series. Ness and what's the other kid's name in Smash Bros?
Lucas?
Lucas, thank you. Are all from the Earthbound series, or the Mother series as it's known in Japan. So this is a very, like, if you ever played Undertale today, Undertale is very artistically modeled after what Earthbound was.
Gotcha.
So very cartoony, real world kids doing crazy cool things. Humor was really funny. So we go back to localization. It was groundbreaking. It had a whole bunch of different types of RPG elements kind of mixed in a new way that we haven't really seen before on Northern American shores, because it was like Final Fantasy, but it was kind of like River City Ransom meets Final Fantasy, and now I'm getting into good stuff, good story. I haven't finished it, but I've played it before. It's on the Super Nintendo Classic.
Well, speak of the devil, and he shall appear. We finally have a Final Fantasy on this list as well, with Final Fantasy.
Is this the first one?
I believe so. I just scrolled up just to double check, and because I thought we had talked about how there wasn't a Final Fantasy last time, and so finally showing up on the list. We've got Final Fantasy 6.
Yeah.
Which,
oh my
again,
gosh, that's like arguably the best Final Fantasy ever.
Yeah, not one that I have a lot of experience with, but widely recognized, and I bow and acknowledge to those who came before me. But yeah, everyone loves Final Fantasy, or everyone who was born like a year or two before me loves Final Fantasy 6.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the villain is unlike any in his craziness, and there's like 13 characters that all have crazy good stories, and it's just really well done, and the gameplay is super fun. Battle system is fantastic. The whole Esper, which is like the summons that you equip as gear, can like boost stats in various ways. And it had like different combat mechanics. There was a fighter, Saban or Saban, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like the company that made Power Rangers, I know, but I could be wrong because I haven't played it forever. But he does like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter style, like quarter circle forward, like combos to like fight with. And then there's a ninja that like throws items, which is, harkens back to the old Final Fantasies. So it just mixed a whole bunch of new stuff, and they made it fresh. They made it new. Squaresoft did a phenomenal job. Final Fantasy 6.
Nice.
Yep.
Sweet. All right. Well, again, another first for this list. We have a Star Wars game on here from LucasArts for the PC, Star Wars TIE Fighter. Did you play TIE Fighter?
I played its sequels. There was X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, I believe. That was the one I played. So I got the gist of the gameplay. It's like first-person space flight simulator.
Mm-hmm. And you're actually like you're a TIE Fighter fighting against X-Wings. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You play as the Empire, right?
You do. And actually, I was just briefly pulled up the page for it, and it looks like you actually have like Grand Admiral Thrawn in here, who is like a very heavily featured character in the extended universe stuff. And I didn't realize that he was featured in games this early, so that's kind of cool. But cool, awesome, great. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I also know that it's a classic, you know what I mean? A classic Star Wars game. So it might be one of the only Star Wars games on this list. I think the only one, the Jedi Knight, and I would imagine that like Knights of the Old Republic is on here, but there's not a lot of Star Wars games on this list. So
there are only 3.
Wow.
And this is one of them. Yep.
All right, well, 94 continues to not hold back any, but we're still in 1994. This is one of those bigger years for best games of all time. And just games in general. But yeah, next on the list is Super Metroid.
Oh my gosh.
Total classic.
This is like one of my favorite games of all time. Like, this is, if I had to make my own Termites list of favorite video games of all time, this is the Metroid game that's making it on that list. Super Metroid is incredible. Like, the atmosphere, the environment, you are Samus Aran alone on a strange planet, and you can't escape. The whole like genre is called Metroidvania. It's obviously named after Metroid, and it's where you collect items that allow you to open new doors and continue to explore. Very little direction or hand-holding. You just throw in, it's like puzzle platformer. It's labeled as an action-adventure game, but it's way more than that. You can equip all these different items and upgrades that allow you to do all these different things. The boss fights every one of them is very unique. It requires a different way of thinking, like platforming or aiming or shooting or a combination of special weapons that you have. So it challenges you. Directional. I am horrible with directions. If you've watched my live streams, you'll see me get lost at every second. I'm always lost. Like, I have no idea where I'm going ever. So this game definitely is hard to navigate if you're like me. I absolutely adore and love Super Metroid. I've played through it. I think I've only beat it once, but I've at least started the game 10 to 15 times. Like, I love that game so much.
Yeah, it's the first... Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, it's the first Metroidvania game on this list, because not even Castlevania showed up.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. But that's, I mean, again, Metroid, I think, was, at least early in that kind of genre style, Metroid was way more popular to begin with. I never really experienced Metroid, again, until Smash Bros. I didn't know who Samus was till Smash. But I definitely, so I had more experience with Castlevania. But
so,
yeah,
Super Metroid.
But I didn't have
Metroid
an SNES.
3.
I didn't have
true,
an.
You didn't.
I didn't have SNES. So that's
you're a baby. That's why
I went from NES to N64, and there wasn't a Metroid game on N64 as far as I know.
Nope, there was not a proper Metroid game. Super Metroid is actually Metroid 3, right? And there were 3 Castlevania games on the NES.
Yep.
So I think and there's 4. Castlevania 4 was on the Super Nintendo. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that Metroid was more popular than Castlevania, because if it was, then there would be more of them.
Oh, touche. Yeah, fair enough. But it definitely stood the test of time more than
like Super Metroid is. I would play that games over any Castlevania any day.
Yeah. All right, cool. To close out 94, we have UFO Enemy Unknown, a turn-based strategy game by Microprose, published by Microprose for the PC. Did you ever play this game? I did not.
I've never heard of it. I looked at the art to see if maybe the cover art would jog a memory.
No, that's
idea.
Some Lovecraftian stuff right there. That's awesome.
It's a giant bug with a gun.
Yeah, so I don't know. It looks like oh my gosh, it looks almost like a crappier version of The Sims. That's weird. Okay, well, whatever. Never played it, so I'd love to hear what people think of it if they played it. So I don't know if it deserves to be on the list or not, because I don't know anything about it, but that's subjective. So 6 people in the gaming industry, apparently. At least 6 know about UFO.
Must have struck some chords somewhere.
Yep, cool. All right, moving on to 1995. So moving on from 94's heavy hitting list to a pretty strong start for 95 with Chrono Trigger, RPG by Square for the SNES.
Did you ever play this one?
I didn't, but you guys talk about it all the time.
Arguably the best RPG of all time. Yes, that was kind of a pun, because Chrono Trigger is about time travel. Best RPG of all time. It is one
time.
That's funny. Yes, and the character's name is Chrono, of course.
Gotcha.
If Termite had to make a list of favorite video games of all time, this is one of those entries that would totally be on it. Absolutely adore and love Chrono Trigger. Yeah, not like Final Fantasy at all. Time travel was added to the game. There's multiple endings. New Game Plus exists because of this game, an entirely new way of, I finished the game, what do I do? And adding replay value to the game by having 9 different endings where you end the game at different points in the story, including the hardest one, which is you end the game as soon as you start. And the only way you're going to do that is if you've done New Game Plus multiple times to build your characters up to max level and get the best gear. Gear requires you to do New Game Plus to unlock specific things. It's super, super deep and very, very, very well done. Squaresoft just killed it. The Super Nintendo age of RPGs is unmatched. It's awesome. Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger, so good.
Yeah.
And Super Mario RPG did not make the list, and I don't know when it came out, but it's not on here, and that's my other favorite RPG. But anyway, I digress.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. All right, well, 95, we'd also see in the real-time strategy space, we'd see a game I'm intimately familiar with, Warcraft 2 and Tides of Darkness. Yeah, Tides of Darkness was the original. And then Beyond the Dark Portal was the expansion.
So you actually played this game?
Tides of Darkness. I did. I did.
Tell me about it.
Warcraft 2 is awesome. I mean, it just took what the first game did, Warcraft 1, I guess, Orcs and Humans, and just expanded upon it in some awesome ways. Just added more units and there's better balance to it. The graphics were sharper at the time. They looked awesome. It was kind of where Warcraft would land on its cartoony style that it would carry on into future Warcraft games. And I loved Warcraft 2. Not so heavy on the story, but they were still telling the story primarily through text at that point. They hadn't had cinematics. That wouldn't be till Warcraft 3. So, but yeah, no, Warcraft 2, fantastic RTS. I remember playing a lot of it and I remember loving it, but I was 5 years old when this game came out, so I probably didn't actually even play it until 96 or 97, and I don't remember much of it. So I just remember
I actually played StarCraft first, and then I went back and played Warcraft 2 and liked it better. I love Warcraft 2.
Yeah.
But I was 9 years old when this game came out, and I didn't have a PC that could play games. So
all right, cool. Next in 95 is Yoshi's Island.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This defined, if you talk about swan songs, And I'm glad this is actually the last Super Nintendo game on the list. And it makes perfect sense as it being the end of the Super Nintendo's life cycle, because the Nintendo 64 was getting ready to come out, and they were pushing the limits to what the hardware for Super Nintendo could possibly do. And this used every trick imaginable for the Super Nintendo, so much so that the emulated versions of this game can't even keep up. Like the Super Nintendo Classic, which is an official Nintendo licensed product, the emulation is subpar to the actual experience because of very technical hardware specifications with how the cartridge had chips added to it, as well as the Super Nintendo and how they communicated. There's like certain effects that were blinks out incorrectly on the emulation from Nintendo's home, like first party version. It's crazy. So the graphics and the sound in this game are the best you'll see on Super Nintendo as far as putting an entire package on it. Like the platforming is it does things no other game has done before. Yoshi turns into like different vehicles, and there's hidden stuff everywhere. That it's like the most open world side scrolling 2D platformer I've ever played. Well, at the time. And yeah, it's so good. It's where Mario's a baby, rides on Yoshi's back, and when you get hit, like Mario flies away, you have to go chase him down, and that's how you die, quote unquote, if he gets away. So yeah, super good. Have you played that?
I did not. No, I didn't play a Yoshi specific game until Yoshi's Story.
Okay, yeah, this is the one right before that. It's actually this game is actually labeled as Super Mario World 2: Yoshi's Island.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I guess I did play it. So because you play as Mario, right? And you
there's Super Mario World 1.
Oh, gotcha. No, that's
that was a launch title.
Yeah, that's the one I played.
This is that sequel, but absolutely phenomenal Super Nintendo game.
Yeah. All right, well, moving on to 1996. This is another very heavy-hitting year. It might be one of the, I think 97 might have it beat in regards to amount of titles. But we follow up with, we talked about Civilization last time, and Civilization 2 is on the list for the first one here in 96. Microprose developed that one as well, and for the PC, I believe Sid Meier was involved. But yeah, Civ 2, all the Civilization games are pretty popular, so don't see a reason why it shouldn't be on there.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
They were always too complicated for me, so I never really played it.
All I know is that Gandhi's a jerk. That's all I know from those games.
Nice.
Is the AI that controls Gandhi is always a backstabbing, power-hungry monster versus his actual real life, the actual real life historical figure that was totally about nonviolence. But now, Civilization's Gandhi, he's cutthroat. He's cold-blooded. Anyways, in that strategy game space as well, there'd be Command and Conquer: Red Alert. I never really played any of the Command & Conquer games, but yeah, that's by Virgin Interactive as well for the PC.
Mm-hmm. I got into Command & Conquer. There was a later one in the entries. There's like I don't even remember them all, but I went back and played this one late, and it didn't really jive with how good quality Blizzard was cranking out, like Warcraft and StarCraft. This just seemed subpar, but it's more realistic. It's like real life humans, tanks, helicopters, missiles.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's fun. I'm glad it's on the list because I guess one entry and it's
people always talk about Command and Conquer. Yeah, at least back in the day, people used to always talk about it. So, all right, cool. Duke Nukem 3D.
Oh man, yeah, this game came out in 1996.
Published by GT Interactive for the PC. First person shoot. This was the first person. I guess Duke Nukem started off as FPS or had FPS entries.
Yeah. Most of it
I don't remember.
Most of all the Duke Nukems are 3D or first-person shooters.
There's
a side-scrolling platform one, and there's a third-person over-the-shoulder one.
Yeah,
but for the most part,
Duke Nukem is the classic. Like, this game is too old for its target audience, and that's why it's its target audience. If that makes sense. Like, it was so mature. But like so mature and both juvenile at the same time. Like when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, this game is embarrassing for the people that could actually play it. But like, again, this game was the game where it was like, oh my gosh, you have Duke Nukem? That's so cool. Because you're a edgy fifth grader, and
you go to a strip club and you can like give the girls money, and he like says a bunch of corny, cheesy lines.
Right.
So full disclosure, I just got the platinum in the 20th anniversary version of this for PS4 yesterday. And you can use cheat codes that are built into the game to like blow through a lot of the levels, but you still get to experience the game. It was perfect. It was like, I don't want to sit and digest this game again. It is way more juvenile and over the top than I could ever imagine. Like one of the bosses, you like rip his like body parts, you rip his head off or something, and then he defecates in his hole. Like you pull his head off and he like defecates in his head hole, and then he pulls out a newspaper and he's like chilling. It's just like it's a cinematic at the end of it.
Yeah.
And then, again, like you give money to girls, and they have tassels on, if you know what I'm talking.
Oh my gosh,
family friendly podcast, so it's not full nudity, but it's just ridiculous. And the lines that he says and like the silliness is way over the top. So you talk about controversy. This is one of those games.
I don't have a lot of love for Duke Nukem as a franchise, but it was definitely, I still respect it as that taboo game. You know what I mean? Like growing up, it was always, it was one of those games that was just the taboo. Like if my parents caught me playing this game, I would lose my consoles and I'd lose my access to the PC. So, but yeah, it's
interesting. There was like a trifecta of first person shooters. There was 3D Realms, there was Epic with Unreal, and there was id Software with Doom. And so 3D, this is the other person. So like seeing the game design and the level design in this game and how sprites were animated and stuff, it was definitely way better quality than what Doom had as far as graphics are. This is later, right? It's 96. Doom is years old at this point. And they've done like some interesting things with like the buttons and how you interact with the environment, like water that's flowing down, like you're stuck in it and it will take you with it. Like the new stuff like this was not really in first person shooters. So from a game design perspective, this game's actually got like some pretty cool new things in it, despite its like sheen of horrible juvenile, like over the top humor. So
awesome.
That's why it's on the list, I guess.
Yeah. All right, 96, we'd also see Nights into Dreams. So we just talked about this in our Sega Saturn episode. And in fact, this is the only one on the list that is a Sega Saturn only game. So
yeah, it's interesting that it made this list. And I kind of don't know why. It is kind of niche, but it's not that great. Like I played it. It's fun. Go ahead.
It's very, very much like Sonic because it was made with the engine that the Sonic team was working with. We talk about that. We break all that down in the episode with Sega Saturn. So, but yeah, I mean, just looking at the screenshots, it looks very Sonic-y, very colorful and stuff like that. But yeah, I can't really, again, I guess maybe it was because it was kind of the quote Sonic game of the Sega Saturn that people love it. So I imagine it resonated very, very well with Sega fans at the time.
Yeah, it was fun. I played it.
Yeah,
but
did you play it like after its heyday?
Yeah, way later. Yeah, I played the demo in the stores, and I was like over the moon for it. I wanted it so bad. I was clamoring to have a Sega Saturn. I was playing it at Toys R Us here in Fredericksburg, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, Sega Saturn is gonna be so much fun. This game's amazing." I think I may have lost some sleep over excitement because of this game. But then, like looking back at it, I guess that's why at the time it was on the list. But I don't know because I don't know when this list was made. But like if you go back in time,
it shows up. But hey, it showed up on 6 different lists, so it must have resonated with people. But yeah, I never played it, so I can't even really speak to it. So because I was not a Sega person, but I can speak to this next game because 1996 Pokemon Red and Blue would grace the world stage, obviously by Nintendo for the Game Boy, as has been described very accurately, as you put it in our Everything Pokemon episode. It is baby's first RPG. And, games, like Pokemon, just the quintessential, just like multimedia franchise. You know what I mean? Like Red and Blue obviously were the first, but this game, like the Pokemon team did not waste any time making anime, card games, and just all of it just was just wildly popular over here in America. And being a kid in 1996, I got into some Pokemon.
I was in 6th grade, and I remember like sneaking my Game Boy into school and talking to kids and trying to trade. You know, we had Red and Blue, and who's got what Pokemon, what level are they at? I had the player's guide. Man, I was obsessed. I took my Game Boy everywhere to play this game. I remember
my school banned Pokemon cards because people were like trading and getting into fights.
Oh yeah, same here. Yep,
over the cards. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. It just took the world by storm. And
I felt vindicated because sorry, I was gonna say I felt vindicated because like I would collect Pokemon cards and then get made fun of by my peers, only to have like a year later, my peers were like into Pokemon, and I'm like, you didn't bleed for this.
Yep.
But the games were awesome. I mean, I similarly,
so
and I had one of those. We were making fun of the magnifier for the minis earlier for the Game Gear Mini. Yeah. But I had something very similar to that for my Game Boy that like attached into it and had a light and a magnifying glass, and I was like, I am the best gamer of all time because I have found a way to make my Game Boy screen bigger using science.
Yep.
Yeah, it was awesome. But yeah, I played so much Red and Blue. It was fun. Or I think, sorry. I actually had yellow version. I didn't own Red or Blue, but I played.
You baby.
Yeah,
You child.
But still, Yeah, I played all these games as they came out. I probably didn't encounter them till a year or so later. I don't even know did Pokemon hit the States in 96 or did it hit the States in 97? Oh, okay.
No, it was definitely 96 because I was in 6th grade starting September of that year and I had it.
Man, yeah, I would have been 6 or 7 years old, so I don't remember playing them that early, but I just have poor memory of that time apparently. But oh gosh, yeah, so good. Yeah, it totally deserves to be on the list.
Actually, I would have turned 96. It would have been anyway. Yeah, I was in 6th grade. It was the fall or the spring semester, so it would have been like May or whatever of 96 that I was in 6th grade.
Cool.
I don't even know. I don't know dates, but I was there. And it was awesome, and I played the crap out of it. And it deserves to be on this list because the idea of catching them all, assembling a team you can select 6 things out of 150, and somehow it worked as an RPG. You know, like you have Final Fantasy where you have a static group of like 4, or like Final Fantasy 6 where you had maybe 13 characters you could build your own party out of, but it's kind of nothing compared to 150 different types of Pokemon. Somehow it managed to work.
Evolving them too, like evolving them, then making them stronger and watching them change. Like that was all super compelling. The game there was a mythology around the game. You know what I mean? Like and I don't mean like an intentional mythology. I mean like the game, like game bugs would become like legends. Like it would spread like wildfire. Oh my gosh. If you disconnect your link cable at the same time, you clone the Pokemon because the game can't save it. You know what I mean? Like it registers the trade happened, but it doesn't, like, you know what I mean? Like, so things like that, or like if you take X amount of steps and then like press A a bunch of times at this block, you'll trigger a Mew. And it's because there was game code that was like meant to be executed by like promotionals for Mew, but like somehow it made it into the game and you could like basically hack it, but not with it was so much. And then there was the missing numbers and all that stuff. The game
did that a lot.
Yeah, the game was just fascinating with how much like mythology grew up around the culture of Pokemon due to things that were just ultimately just bugs built into the game code. Not intentional, not mysteries, just bugs. So yeah, no, Pokemon was a fascinating cultural phenomenon. So cool. And still continues to be a fascinating cultural phenomenon.
Ridiculously popular, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, next is Quake, first-person shooter for the PC, published by GT Interactive.
All of these PC games, man, I missed them all. And I did not play Quake until way, way later.
No, PC gaming was pretty popular in the 90s, especially for these first-person shooters where that mouse and keyboard were baked into how the games worked. There were no consoles with dual sticks yet. Or they were not prolific enough to really make the switch. So we'll get to when that started to happen though. But at the time, that mouse and keyboard were king for first person shooters. So, but yeah, no, Quake has a whole following. QuakeCon, it's become an esport in and of itself. The original, even from 1996. So the game is foundational to first person shooters and esports. So cool.
It was rated very well. Crazy good level design and. Yeah,
I feel like all these games, 1996 is just like, oh my gosh, wow, boom. Resident Evil is next by Capcom for the PlayStation, survival horror game, first horror game I believe on the list. But you can talk more about Resident Evil because I don't think I've ever played the original.
Oh, you never played the original? Okay, I played the director's cut, which came out later. I didn't have a PlayStation, so I couldn't play this when it came out. We were Nintendo kids, but when we did get it and we finally got a PlayStation, actually the Christmas of 96, we got a PlayStation. So I went and rented Resident Evil eventually, which is why I played the director's cut late. It's super ridiculously scary. It has like fixed camera points of view, and the tank controls at the time, which we call them tank controls now, are obtuse and they don't make no sense. So I don't know why, like, I don't know how 10-year-old me, 11-year-old me felt. It seemed okay at the time, but now I'm like, no, this is horrible. But anyway, I'm glad they fixed that stuff.
Yeah.
So you had these like great, amazing atmospherical songs and like the sound effects of the zombies and how scary it was because of the fixed camera angles. They did a lot of camera tricks to like hide zombies, but you could hear them, but you know they're there, and like make it difficult to aim. And there were these cool puzzles you could do, like moving furniture pieces around, and there's limited inventory slots, so you had to go find these safe room boxes to deposit your inventory into and like carry and go back and forth and backtrack around. And sometimes zombies would respawn, enemies you would kill would come back, but then there's limited ammo. So there's the whole psyche behind it, which we see in the Resident Evil 2 remake, we just played. So a lot of the fundamentals, if you break that game down and what made it good, were present in Resident Evil for the first time ever.
Yeah,
like, it was unprecedented. It was so.
Have
good.
we done a gosh 140 episodes? I can't even remember what we've done. Have we done a Resident Evil everything Resident Evil because we should if we
have.
haven't yet. Yeah, Resident Evil is a great franchise, and with 8 coming out soon, or it's in development now. Like,
I have no idea. Are you announcing something brand new?
No, I thought there was. Yes, Capcom. Surprise! I work for Capcom.
I don't know if there's anything in the works for Resident Evil 8 or not. I mean, there's going to be a Resident Evil announcement that was planned for E3, so we'll find out something.
I had heard that there was Resident Evil 8, and it was supposed to be like super dark and scary, taking it really into the like psychological horror that 7 was kind of starting, but getting out of the kind of sci-fi's, like not hyper focusing on zombies quite as much, but getting way more into like the sci-fi, or sorry, getting away from the sci-fi zombies and more into like psychological horror. So could be interesting. Anyways, sorry, that's complete tangent. Anyways, just to say, I think we should do Resident Evil 1, but cool. Well, moving on, a lot of good in Resident Evil, but moving on, we would have Super Mario 64. So I know you want to talk about
my life around. Like, this game turned my video game experience upside down, flipped the table. I mean, like, knew everything and just blew open all of the doors to what is possible in gaming for me. I played this game for like the first time at a store demo when it was announced, and I was absolutely blown away. Complete, to me at the time, open world. You can go anywhere you want. In fact, the commercial said, go anywhere you want to go, do anything you want to do. I remember, like, stupid. Like,
totally
I remember
that, but still close enough.
Exactly. But yeah, it was close enough. You just jump through a picture and you're like at a level, and like the music and the sound effects and the environments and the level design, and like going back and getting 8 stars, grinding them out of the same level by doing different objectives. All of that had never been done before. Masterful. I mean, set the tone for what 3D platforming will look like for the rest of gaming. I mean, like this is the first,
right. And this game prototyped. Yeah, this game really prototyped games making the jump, so to speak, from 2D
to 3D.
2D to 3D, yeah. Successfully making the jump, and we would see that prototyping happen with Zelda. We'd see that prototyping continue, and we've seen games fail to make that jump successfully.
Yep.
So yeah, no, Mario 64 foundational to 3D platforming and 3D games in general, I might say. So, but yeah, at 60, that again, this for me was like N64. You have to, if you have an N64, you borrow it, you buy it, you get your hands on Super Mario 64 because it's fantastic.
Constantly, yeah. And it's funny because this is the 5th Mario game in my whole life in childhood. It seems like there's a lot more Mario today everywhere. Like, there's so many. There's like 20 some Mario games now, but this was the 5th Mario, and I had been playing Mario for 10 years. So yeah, you put it in perspective of like, my son's 5 years old. When I was his age, I was playing Mario 3, and that was it. Like, that was all that was there. And if I want to play a different Mario game, I play Mario 1 or Mario 2, and that's all there was. And then the Super Nintendo had come out, and I remember that being groundbreaking, earth-shattering. Like, you can jump on a dinosaur, the graphics were amazing, different cool upgrades everywhere, you could fly in a cape, and like, that's all we had. And when did that come out? 91? So 5 years had gone by. With when you're from 5-year-old to a 10-year-old, 5 years is an eternity.
It's a decade. It's forever. I mean, not a decade.
And you sat on these Mario games, and then this comes out. And I can't, like, as an adult, if I had lived through this period as an adult, I would be able to critically recognize that this game is shaking the foundations of what video game is possible, period. Like we said, like we just said, this game shaped 3D platformers and 3D gaming forever. But amplify that and to another degree of magnitude for a 10-year-old whose mind was just splattered all over the screen when he saw this game. Like,
we like Mario 64. We could wax eloquent about it, and we do wax eloquent about it in our Mario episode.
This makes my top, Termite's favorite games of all time, for sure.
For sure. Yep. Cool. All right. To close out 1996, wow, what a heavy hitting year. We have Tomb Raider by Eidos. It's crazy to remember that, before they were Square Enix, like, it was a bunch of separate companies, and Eidos made Tomb Raider to start with. But this game came out for the Sega Saturn, which I didn't know, and the original PlayStation. But I mean, Tomb Raider, freaking Lara Croft and her pixelated body would be foundational to video gaming culture for a long time. But I mean, these were still, the Tomb Raider franchise is a great action adventure games, third person shooter mechanics, maybe not living up by today's standards, but what they accomplished at their time was awesome. Puzzles, platforming, shooting. Yeah. This game would be kind of foundational to what action games like Uncharted, going forward would end up being able to do. They owe it all to Tomb Raider. So,
have you ever played it? The original one?
I have, yes, but
it is terrible. It did not age well at all. It is trash.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Like, oh my gosh.
But I still think it deserves to be on this list for what it accomplished at its time.
Oh, yeah, at the time, sure. It was fantastic. It was unprecedented. So,
yep. Cool. All right. Yeah, it's a hard thing. It's like context. You have to consider timelessness. That's why it's like, there's going to be some games on this list that are like, as a side note, there are going to be some games on this list that are like a little bit extra special because they do stand the test of time. And there are some games that you're just like, you can only take them for the context they are. Where like, no, this is a trash game by today's standards. However, when you look at it by the what was capable at the time and what trends it started, then it best games of all time. That's what's hard. It's hard to define what's the best game of all time. Yeah. But anyways,
a lot of
that's why this list is massive.
Yeah, it's huge. A lot of the PlayStation and N64 games did not age well due to the fact that they're like the first 3D graphics, and so textures are garbage, clipping is bad, animation models weren't established the way we see them today, and so
controls weren't nearly as refined, inputs and all that, and controllers.
So even
were a lot
Super
smaller.
Mario 64 isn't the golden child that I thought it was at the time. I go back and play it now, and I'm like, eesh, this is kind of hard to play because of what we've seen since. But yeah,
and oh gosh, that N64 controller is just the worst. All right, cool. Well, 97. If 96 couldn't get
97 said, "Hold my beer."
Yeah, exactly. So to start with, we finally have Castlevania showing up to the party with Castlevania Symphony of the Night, widely regarded as, I mean, there are games that are still mimicking what Symphony of the Night did to this day. Like Bloodstained Ritual of the Night's made by the same creator, and he basically made it because fans wanted him to make another Symphony of the Night, basically. Yep. This game you play as is one of the first, I think the first Castlevania game where you did not play as a Belmont. You instead play as Dracula's son, Alucard. And picks up story. It's almost a direct sequel to Rondo of Blood, which I don't know which number that was, but that's the one with Richter. That's the one with Richter in it. So Richter is actually a character in a boss you fight as Alucard. But yeah, this is probably the best Castlevania game. And so if any Castlevania game deserves to be on this list, it's Symphony of the Night. I have not really played it, but I am talking about it on behalf of fans because I know how like foundational this game is.
Huh. Neat. Yeah, there was a Super Nintendo version of the Rondo of Blood called Dracula X. So if you played Dracula X on Super Nintendo, this was the next game after that. Interesting. Yep. I didn't know that. I never played this game. I've wanted to forever. So if anyone has a copy and they want to send it to me, forego the fortune you will make on eBay and send it to me instead. Because I will love and adore this game.
Nice. Awesome. Well, cool. In the same kind of gothic, dark realm, we had Blizzard's original Diablo. So this is a franchise near and dear to my heart, but I have to say, other than briefly touching it, I've never actually played the original Diablo. Yeah. But I mean, this game really kind of like, again, launched an entire genre, the ARPG genre, or the top-down isometric ARPG, I should say. It really was like an RPG version of like Warcraft at the time. You had the whole fog of war, so you couldn't really see what was just beyond your field of vision, if you will. Yep. And so it was really like gothic horror is the best way to describe it. It was terrifying when you'd be swarmed by enemies on all sides, and so it had that element of horror and shock, and then just had a vibe of that kind of gothic fantasy that really worked at the time. Was a huge hit. So
yeah, and what's unique about this is procedurally generated dungeons, so you could play it infinitely amount of times and have a different experience slightly. You couldn't memorize or map out the dungeons yourself. You were forced to uncover the map yourself, walking through fog of war in a terrible or terrifying, like scary environment with enemies everywhere. And you never know what you were going to get. Like even the enemies that would spawn were procedurally like generated. So it was RNG for random number generator to figure out like what you might fight. So some people have a harder experience than others because of that. So, and you could choose 3 different classes. And they had 3 different sets of abilities, and so like those kinds of things,
gear and potions and stuff like that. Yeah, it was taking what Dungeon Crawlers before it did and just really codifying it into a solid experience. Also, ends on a pretty fascinating cliffhanger for the time. You know, for the rudimentary storytelling that Diablo is capable of. The fact because they established the idea of the soul gems or whatever, the soul stones, I think they were called, and how if you jam it into your head, you are possessed by that demon. So Diablo originally was a child who found the soul stone and was compelled by the demon within to jam it into his head, and that's how Diablo was a kid.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the original Diablo, the hero himself takes the soul stone and jams it into his head, and that's the final cinematic. But Blizzard. Yeah, Blizzard's always, and then that's Diablo and Diablo 2 is you basically are fighting the possessed version of your character from the original. But yeah, no, it's again, Blizzard always brings great cinematics to the table. I mean, that's something we could have mentioned in Warcraft 2 as well. Just the cinematic, the game graphics itself were, standard, par for the course of the time, but their cinematics are just beautifully crafted, lovingly crafted cinematics. That's what Blizzard became known for in those early days. Although
Definitely.
the same could be true about Square as well, especially as we get into this year's Square games, which we're not going to do that yet. Instead, we're going to talk about Fallout because it's next on the list.
Which, speaking of isometric RPGs, it looks like the industry was clamoring for more. I don't know if, like, you think about development time of a game, 4 to 5 years, somehow Diablo and Fallout come out on the same year, and they're very similar experiences.
Yeah.
Fallout, way more story. It was published by Interplay at the time. It was before Bethesda got the IP for it and all that stuff. That's a whole story. That'd be fun. Maybe we do it everything Fallout. So this was another one. It was a little bit more complicated than Diablo was. So that was kind of the magic of Blizzard as well, as it took complicated RPG stuff or like Warcraft, like RTS things, and it didn't dumb them down, but it definitely made them more palatable.
More streamlined, Again, instead of having to deal with like 15 different stats, all of which do very similar things or wildly different things, you'd have, 3 or 4 stats that you can understand, wrap your head around. Once you get them, it's like, okay, this increases my crit, this increases my health, this increases my damage, boom. You know what I mean? Like, always very straightforward, kind of simplifying, but not, like you said, not to the point of dumbing down. But Fallout, we're talking
Fallout
about
was the same way with dialogue choices and super deep story, very, very complicated, or at least detail. I wouldn't say super complicated, but very detailed character stats with the whole special strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck, which we've seen today in the modern entries of Fallout. I was going to say Warcraft, but modern entries of Fallout. So this is kind of where it all started. But this is an isometric top-down RPG, and it's post-nuclear Fallout is the point, right? So the bombs went off.
That's where the term Fallout comes.
Right.
Yep. Yep. And you see that again, that vibe and that look and feel of the game continues to then into the entries today.
There was a change from like 3 to 4 where they became a little bit more jovial and humorous with like the whole 1940s, 50s vibe.
Pip-Boy.
And Pip-Boy and all that stuff. This was before that. So this game was way more serious and way more grungy and deep. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Next on the list is, talking about Final Fantasies, talking about Square. We have Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yes.
Which was tactical version of Final Fantasy. So, turn-based strategy, all about deploying troops, and you had the battlefield was a square, divided up into little squares and stuff. I did not, unfortunately. I know a lot about it.
Killing me.
Sorry, I was never interested. I didn't care for tactical. I've never really cared for tactical RPGs, though. To be fair, I never gave them a chance. So.
Did you ever play Fire Emblem or Front Mission?
Not Tactical Wars, Advance Wars, none of that stuff.
Yeah, Advance Wars? None?
Nope. Sorry. It's just not a genre I have
Final
a lot
Fantasy
of experience
Tactics hit my radar because Cloud was in it. And I was like, I have to get Cloud. And I had no idea what a tactical role-playing RPG was. I didn't have a clue. But then I played it, and I immediately fell in love with Final Fantasy Tactics. The storyline is incredible. It's like there's this God of War, Winter
Kratos and Cloud are in Tactics?
No. Winter is coming. What is this series? Oh my gosh.
Game of Thrones.
Thank you. Wow. There's this almost Game of Thrones-esque family warfare happening, and politics are happening on the side, and you're like a child, essentially, like a young boy, like working through as the son and heir of a throne, and the families are at war, and you're like going through. So it's this deep story that has to do with like these zodiac stones that power someone up, turn them into crazy demons, and it is phenomenal. The story is fantastic. Nice. The character build out system, the job classes, and how you could build and learn abilities, and every time you like random encounters would happen with different enemies, you could it was so much fun how to build up stuff. Yeah, if you haven't played Tactics, go find a way to go play Final Fantasy Tactics. It's on your phone, and it works wonderfully on your phone. It's one of the best translated Final Fantasy games from console to phone than other ones, so go do it. It's cheap.
Nice. Well, speaking of Final Fantasy games, I'm going to have to curb you in on this one, or else you'll spend the next 20 minutes talking about it. So, 1997, speaking of Cloud, speaking of Final Fantasy, speaking of great cinematics, we would finally see Final Fantasy VII grace the stage. We have both waxed eloquent about this particular game. In our Final Fantasy episode, it's featured heavily because it's both of our favorite Final Fantasy games. But yeah, just totally deserves to be on this list, not just because of the cultural markets left. Again, just look at the last year, people clamoring for Final Fantasy VII Remake. The game was that popular that people have been begging for a remake for years. It was so popular that Squaresoft used it, or not Square, Sony used it as a way to show off what its engine was capable of back in PS3, I want to say.
It was a PS3 tech demo.
Yeah, the tech demo. So this game is just it's legendary. I mean, storytelling, gameplay, knocked it out of the park. Everyone loves it.
My favorite game of all time. So I'm not going to speak to it because I could go on for an entire podcast about this.
Yeah, but it just totally on this list makes not just this game does it stand out, but it makes this year stand out. So cool. Mm-hmm. All right. Other games with 7 in them. GoldenEye 007 would come out in 1997, and first-person shooter for the Nintendo on the N64. I mean, what else is there to say? It's probably one of the only games that is like one of those tie-ins with a movie, and somehow this game blows the movie out of the water in regards to regard. The actual GoldenEye movie was meh. It was a Bond movie with Pierce Brosnan. Not the best, not the worst, but just kind of meh. Yeah. This game, however, is like
Rareware. That's why.
Yeah. This game was just awesome, and I think it had more to do with its multiplayer. Console.
I was going to say this is the grandfather of Halo and Call of Duty and the modern first-person shooter that we even see today. I would even say Overwatch. Like everything harkens back to the popularity of 4 players on a couch shooting each other in GoldenEye, and that experience,
and screaming at each other and chucking their controllers. But like when you play this game, like the controls are obnoxious because they were designed for a freaking N64 controller. One joystick, you had to hold Z if you wanted to do precision aiming, so nobody did it. Like everyone would just run around and just hit fire at each other. But this game's great. That's why things like the Golden Gun itself were popular, because it was one shot. And but definitely that idea of like sitting down and just playing for hours multiplayer. This game really started it. So it did not age well. It didn't, but it didn't have a bad campaign either, though. Like to be completely fair,
the campaign was amazing.
Campaign was fantastic.
Yeah, it was like super deep, and there's like these objectives based on the difficulty that you could do. So it had replayability. You unlock cheats as you play, so it further enhanced like the New Game Plus shot in your arm where you get excited, like that endorphin rush of cheating and like unlocking more cheats to make it easier. And how the single player campaign was awesome. Like you said, it was way better than the movie, even though it followed the movies.
Right, exactly. Yep. So, 97, we also see Gran Turismo, a racing game by Sony for the PlayStation.
The very first racing simulator for mainstream consoles.
Yeah.
Polyphony, I believe, is the developer, and I'm actually mousing over Gran Turismo to make sure I said that right.
Yeah, I will not trash Gran Turismo because my cousin, she had a PlayStation, and she loves this game. And so if I were to talk bad about it, I would be probably disowned from her side of the family. So
you don't like racing games anyway, do you?
I don't like racing games, but it's fine. It was fun. I would play it with her when I visit, and it was a fun racing game. So I would always prefer when we would play Spyro, but this is a good racing game.
Yeah, I guess Spyro would be a little bit more appealing to a young boy. It's funny than Cars. Although Cars would
really, yeah. I was gonna say I just wasn't a car kid. That's the only reason why.
Knowing you, a dragon, a tiny little purple dragon with itty bitty wings, running around blasting people with fire
all day, every day.
Yeah, than a Mazda RX-7 drifting down a mountain.
Wait, are you calling me a nerd? Is that what you're saying?
Hey, did I say that out loud?
No, I did, but cool.
The cool part about Gran Turismo, the last thing I want to say about it is like the racing simulator. Don't gloss over the simulation part. Like they actually went above and beyond the ability to mirror real life physics, tire pressure, friction, car weight, and like aerodynamics and things that you could do to the cars and actual racing. Like this was the closest at the time. It's not it's way better now, but at the time you could actually translate in-game tactics from real life. Like real life drivers would have an advantage in this game because they knew how to follow a line. They knew how to brake, and it was just the start. Like now we have a plethora of stuff. So this was the first one. That's why it set the world on fire.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, next is Star Fox 64, and they list this as a shoot 'em up. I guess you could call it that, but to me, it's more of a like fantasy flight simulator. You know what I mean? It's not. I guess flight sim would imply realism, and it doesn't have that. But still, it's like it's a jet game. It's a jet fighter game in the same way.
Yeah, it's like a rail shooter.
Yeah. But obviously by Nintendo for the N64. I love this game way more than the original Star Fox. And, we had talked about that last time.
It's my favorite one in the whole entire franchise for me.
Oh yeah, I think it might be objectively the best one in the franchise. It's just great. I mean, great story, great replayability, with like the different branching paths that you can take, and
and like the hidden depth to unlock each path, like the stuff you had to do, and like focus on hit a button to open a gate or like kill enemies or not.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. Anything else you wanted to add for Star Fox?
The voice acting was kind of revolutionary for the time for a console game, because the CD-ROM, the appeal of CD-ROM was the ability to have CD quality audio and full motion video and like higher quality, where the cartridges were still limited in that. So I think some of the voice acting in Star Fox, it's all corny and cheesy. There's a ton of memes out there right now, like do a barrel roll came from this game. But like at the time when it came out, we never really had that kind of voiceover in video games. And it had a really great way of telling the story as you are playing instead of stopping and having a cinematic. It was like the story is unfolding as you continue to play. And I thought that was really like groundbreaking for the time. So one of the best 64 games, one of the best. It is the best Star Fox game. So definitely needs to be on this list.
For sure. Cool. To close out 97, we've got two more games. We'd have one of two more Star Wars games on the list. Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. First-person shooter by LucasArts for the PC. We talked about this game in our Everything Star Wars episode as we celebrated May the 4th be with you. But yeah. I mean, this is a great first-person shooter. Kind of took what Doom did and gave it a Star Wars flavor. So
yeah,
it's cool.
The whole franchise, like Jedi Outcast, is the later entry in it, right? So this is like
that's the one that I have more experience with. Yeah, I don't have a lot of
here.
experience with Dark Forces too. But cool. All right. Well, then to close out 97, we had Tekken 3, fighting game by Namco for the arcades. One of the last arcade games on this list. Not the last one, but one of them. So, did you want to talk about Tekken?
I love
remember
Tekken.
playing
it. Was actually, like, Tekken 3 was the first. Like, I'd played Tekken 1 and Tekken 2, and like it was okay. It was a fighting game. It was a 3D fighting game, so like Virtual Fighter. To me, they always felt a little bit more clunky and like weighty than the Mortal Kombats and Street Fighters. And at this time, I was more interested in like the Marvel versus Capcom or like the Street Fighter versus X-Men style, like what Capcom was producing. So this was a fully polygonal 3D fighting game, Tekken, but 3 had a magic to it. I don't know why, and it totally deserves to be on this list. If you're going to put a Tekken game on there, I think 3 is probably the best. Maybe Tag Tournament, which came afterward, had a huge like selection of characters that all had unique fighting styles. So you'd have like someone who's really good at Taekwondo and someone who's good at like Brazilian dance fighting. It was awesome. And the story, each character had like their own story that played out. So it was kind of fun. But yeah, Tekken 3, it's good stuff. Go check it out.
Awesome. All I remember about the Tekken franchise is King, the dude with the tiger head. And I'm like, he's got a tiger head.
Yeah, he's a wrestler. He actually had like wrestling. I didn't like playing him at all.
Yeah.
He was super slow.
All right, well, we're about to hit 1998, which is another huge year. And given how long it took us to get through 97, and given our current time, I totally undershot where I thought we'd end up tonight. So yeah, exactly. Again, I sold this stuff sort of. So, as opposed to the first episode where we got through like over like 15 years or something worth of content, we got through 4. Yeah.
1994 through 1998. We didn't even get to 98.
Wow. Come on. We talked too much.
6, 7, yeah.
The guys are probably listening and like, oh gosh, shut up, you guys, about these games. So that is, but that's all we have time for tonight. And that was skipping DLC. So yeah, that's where we're going to land. Though, again, part of the reason why I'm closing us off here before we jump into 98 is because I wanted to see if we notice any trends and break down just kind of trends that we're seeing before we end the episode. So these 4 years, 1994 through 1997, leading up into 98, what are some trends that you're noticing other than the first obvious one, which is holy crap. These were some heavy hitting years, some heavy hitting games. Just like the mid 90s, you can tell that the reason why so many of these games are showing up on the list from the 90s is because many of the people writing these lists of best games of all time were playing games in the 90s. But, if you want to, there's lots of arguments as to what was the golden age of gaming. And I think just based on this list alone, you could make a solid argument for the 90s over the 80s in regards to golden age of gaming, just because of how many of these games ended up on people's best games of all time list. So yeah, that's the first trend that I'd throw out there.
Yeah,
Anything
97
else?
and 98. I mean, I don't know which year is the best year of gaming of all time, but I know 98's in that conversation. We haven't covered 98 yet, but we will. But there's a bunch of heavy hitting stuff. We're seeing, obviously, in this period that we looked at, we saw the jump to 3D, and we saw really good versions of, or really good implementations of what you could do with 3D. And starting with Mario 64. Again, Tomb Raider made the list. I argue that maybe it shouldn't have been there. And if you look at what's like popular and super 3D, you look at Super Mario 64, Tomb Raider, GoldenEye, Gran Turismo, and
Resident
Star
Evil.
Fox.
Yeah.
And Resident Evil. Yeah. Definitely you can still see the trend of marketing to young boys with all of its like super in your face action, like fast paced, just like adrenaline rush. Get it? Like not really slow, methodical story like you would see in Fallout, which is only one game on this list, or maybe Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2 was a little bit slower paced.
Final Fantasy 7, you have some slower paced story building and stuff like that. One of the things I'm noticing that's very clear is just this. You're right. You've got the bombastic, you've got the colorful, you got all of that happening in this period of time. You're also starting to see, as we get to the later end of the 90s and later end of this list, we're starting to see games like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, a very dark, contemplative game, Diablo, Fallout, and those are very, again, you're starting to see that kind of dark, you're starting to see that more teenager, older adult Resident Evil, the kind of the onset of the fascination with horror that would really kick off in the 2000s, and still to this day, a lot of the best-selling games and best-regarded games are either horror or have dark elements. I mean, we're about to see The Last of Us Part 2 come out. Like, yeah, that was kind of starting to really kind of cement itself in the psyche. Even if you just look at the difference between Final Fantasy 6 and Final Fantasy 7, like a game dealing with much, I don't know, I just get a sense of Final Fantasy 7 as being darker. But then again, I can't really speak.
6 is.
No? Oh, 6 is darker? Never mind.
6 is very
okay,
dark.
well then still,
it's
6.
very, very deep.
Yeah, deep. Yeah, it's getting into that kind of...
But 7 took the idea of like 3D with pre-rendered backgrounds being animated as full motion video with polygons laid on top, and like using different unique ways of representing story, and that had never been done before with music and with the little political animations and things. But that's beside, you're seeing what I think what you're saying is you're seeing more emotion being conveyed in games in different ways. If it's the ambience of Diablo and Resident Evil, or if it's the storytelling of Final Fantasy 7. And then later, as we go into the 90s, you start to see more story being fleshed out, more meaty titles kind of emerge from that time. It's like the kids that you were marketed to in the the young boys you were marketing to in the early 90s have now grown up, and you're trying to chase them. Like you're meeting their needs as they grow up and crave more meaningful experiences. The games are making that happen as well with a jump in technology. So it goes hand in hand. It's like, oh, we can do more. Let's do more because they want more. Go ahead. One more. I have one more thought, but I'll let you go because you were going.
No, yeah. My other initial thought here is just seeing just how, I guess, diverse the platforms are. And things, again, PC is doing very well for itself in this period. You've got the Star Wars game, you got a lot of first person shooters on the PC, but you've also got a lot of point and click real time strategy games and ARPGs in this period of time as well. That, again, many of those franchises would then make the jump to consoles later, but they came out originally for the PC because that is what the PCs were capable of at the time, and only capable of with that, the precision of the mouse and keyboard. You wouldn't be able to really see those games make the translation to console until better controllers would come out. So I thought that was interesting as well. But you see it's still pretty diverse. You see a lot, a handful of Sega games thrown in there, a lot of Super NES dominance, and N64 dominance, as well as PlayStation is thrown in there near those later years that we were talking. So,
yeah, and the last thought that I had was maybe not a real thing, and I'm just trying to make it a thing based on the list. But I don't know, it's something I want to explore. But the westernizing. I don't know what I'm trying to say. The westernization of games is kind of becoming evident here with the emergence of GT Interactive, a publishing company behind Duke Nukem, Quake, and you have Blizzard coming out with games. Like, those are Western developers. Rareware, it was out of Europe that Nintendo was partnered with. So we have some heavy hitting Rareware games. And so we're seeing like really good high quality video games coming out of places not Japan. So in the early 80s and early 90s, it was Japan. Sega was Japan, Nintendo was Japan. They were fighting each other here in America because America has a huge market share. And so they were appealing to the American audience and they were fighting over that. But now we're now seeing new, more global like connectivity, cross-pollination. And like you see, what I mean by cross-pollination is that you have a European development company that's trying to appeal to Japan audiences and North American audiences. And you have Blizzard, you're trying to make money, right? It's all capitalism. They're trying to sell their stuff to everywhere. So they're borrowing like features from really good titles back in the 80s and young 90s, like early 90s, and they're now coming out in the late 90s. So that's a trend you can kind of see, and that continues all the way through. Again, I'm exploring out loud as I'm saying this. It makes more sense now. It's actually coming into a more complete thought. But when you have like Fallout 3 and Skyrim, that's like the full open world westernization of a Japanese RPG. It's like taking big, huge, complex worlds and boy, it begins here. Like we're looking at this list and we're seeing that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Cool. I mean, and then just the emergence of I mean, Western developers were in the earlier years that we talked about in the last episode, but just, solidifying that kind of Western flag on Western franchises too. Like those first person shooters really, making that popularity, making that worldwide popularity at this time. I mean, those were started by Western developers as well with Wolfenstein and Doom. So, just kind of, that the competition between Western dominance and Japanese dominance is starting to really, solidify, but to everyone's benefit. These games are again, great classics. So great. Wow. We only get 4 years. That's both fascinating from the standpoint of holy crap, these years were nuts, but also, man, we talked a lot about these games. So we'll be doing more parts of this franchise, and we cannot promise we'll get to them soon because we have other topics we want to talk about. So this has officially become a series. And much to Penguin's chagrin, because when I originally conceived of this episode, I foolhardily thought we could do it all in one, and clearly did not pay enough attention to how many games were on this list and how much we could talk about them. So I underestimated and overestimated myself and Termite to a very great degree. But
I'm going to be wordy about games I care about.
We will be doing more parts of this. Anyways, we want to hear what your thoughts are. Any games on this 4-year span of incredibly heavy hitting years? Anything stand out to you? Any thoughts? Any additions? Anything that we did not do justice? And yes, of course, anything that did not end up on this list, we want to hear what you have to say about it. So, Termite, where
you can find us on all kind of places. If you are listening to us from YouTube and you want to jump into our podcast and give us a subscription, you can go to 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing site with links to all of our podcast applications, our platforms. That's iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, everywhere. All the links are there. The RSS feed link is also there. You can plug that into any third-party podcasting app on your phone, and you can subscribe to us that way. That would be great. We would love your subscription. If you go to iTunes and leave us a review, that'd be fantastic. That helps the algorithms bubble us up to be discovered. So please do that if you haven't already. Thank you for those that have. We would love to build the momentum and continue to grow our audience. If you like to watch us, we're on twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. And we usually go back and forth week to week about who's streaming what, and we play games that we're currently going through. So if you listen to us on the podcast and we have a What Are You Playing segment, we're usually going to have that live for you guys to jump in and talk to us, interact with us there. We also have a Discord server with links in the show notes to that Discord server, as well as on our social media platforms. We exist on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have a subreddit, and that's all 80-bit Podsmash, 80-bit Podsmash. So add us, follow us, subscribe to us, look at us. We post fun things on Instagram, like my son's 5th birthday cake that had a Super Mario mushroom and stars on it that my wife had put together. It was absolutely amazing. That should have been my favorite thing. Too late now. So check us out, and we launch a new podcast episode every midnight on Monday, every week.
That's right, and next week we will be talking about the graphical plateau and what it is, and are we reaching it? Will we ever reach it? And what are the newest developments in getting there? And
it's gonna be so fun. Off the heels of the PS5 reveal, it's gonna be sweet. So
it'll be a good one. So that's what we're talking about next week. And if you're interested in that, then tune in.
See you next week.